There's something haunting about silence that follows an unresolved goodbye, not a blow-up, not a dramatic ending, just a quiet vanishing, like a page turned before the chapter was finished. That's the kind of silence that doesn't leave a man alone. That's the kind of silence that turns into a loop his mind keeps revisiting over and over again. Because whether he admits it or not, you became a story in his life that didn't end the way he expected. And the human brain hates unfinished stories. At first, he may try to push the memories away. He tells himself you've moved on, so he should too. He distracts himself. He works more, flirts more, maybe even dates other women. But no matter what he does, you keep showing up not in body, but in thought. You flash through his mind at the most unexpected times. A smell, a song, a phrase someone else says. You come back when he's alone, when he's tired, when he's unguarded. That's the thing memory doesn't need permission. It slips in through cracks when you least expect it, and the more he tries to suppress it, the louder it becomes, because it's not just nostalgia, it's confusion. It's a part of his mind searching for closure he never earned. Men don't always process emotion in real time. Often, they only start asking the deeper questions when the person they once took for granted is no longer accessible. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop reaching out, when you stop making yourself available, that's when the mental loops begin. He wonders, what did I miss? Was she really trying to tell me something and I just didn't hear it? Did I misread her silence? Was her patience really just her last attempt before walking away? These are not questions he asked while you were still showing up, but now they dominate his internal dialogue. His mind starts digging into old conversations, reading between lines that once seemed clear. He remembers moments he brushed off, times when you were quieter than usual, times when your laughter didn't reach your eyes. All the things that seemed small then now feel like signs. And because he never got the real answers, because you didn't leave with a speech or a breakdown, his brain keeps trying to solve the puzzle. That puzzle becomes a loop he can't escape. What he doesn't realize is that this is how emotional accountability often starts, with quiet reflection, not with guilt, tripping, not with drama, but with the simple, repetitive thought, I didn't understand what I had when I had it. That's where the loop feeds itself, because you weren't just a person in his life, you were a lesson he didn't learn in time, and now you're not present to soften the edges of that reality. You're not responding to late night texts. You're not arguing, you're not giving him emotional access, and when that access is gone, his mind starts replaying what it lost, like a movie he didn't appreciate until the credits started rolling. The truth is, your absence is louder than your presence ever needed to be. That's what makes forgetting impossible. It's not that you're trying to haunt him, it's that he never resolved what you brought into his world. You gave him a different version of love, something deeper, more intentional, more present, and because he didn't fully meet you there, the memory of that imbalance lingers. He's left with what-ifs, and the mind hates what-ifs. The human brain prefers certainty, even if it's painful. But when a man loses a woman without closure, his thoughts become a cycle. His questions become echoes, and he'll keep returning to those echoes because, deep down, he's trying to rewrite what's already been written. You see, when a woman walks away with dignity, without drama, without begging, she takes something powerful with her, his sense of control over the narrative. And now that he doesn't have it, he's desperate to make sense of it. That's why he checks your social media even if he never likes a post. That's why he rereads old texts. That's why he brings your name up in conversations that seem random. He's trying to fill in the blanks. He's trying to put an ending on a story that was never truly finished, but that's not something he can do anymore. That chapter is closed, not because you hated him, but because you outgrew the silence. Because you gave everything you could, and then you gave yourself peace. And that peace, your peace, is what rewrites the story now. So he loops, he revisits, he rethinks. Not because you owe him anything, but because his mind won't let him forget the moment it finally registered. You were the one who deserved to be remembered. He didn't realize it then, but you were more than just the woman he talked to, dated, or shared his time with. You were his safe place emotionally, mentally, sometimes even spiritually. Not because you rescued him, not because you mothered him, but because you saw him. You made space for him to just be, and that's something rare. Most people go through life wearing armor, protecting the softest parts of themselves because it's easier to hide than to risk being misunderstood. But with you, he let his guard down in ways he didn't even fully register while it was happening. You were his calm in the middle of chaos. Whether he was having a bad day or going through things he never told anyone else about, your presence grounded him. It wasn't always about the words you said. Sometimes it was just your energy, the way you listened, the way you didn't judge, the way you knew when to say something and when to just stay close. That's what made you his anchor. You weren't demanding his emotions, you were holding space for them. And when a man experiences that kind of connection, even if he doesn't say it out loud, it imprints on him. It becomes a memory that doesn't fade even when he pretends it has. The irony is, in the moment, he might have thought it was just comfort. Something familiar, something he could always come back to. He may not have realized that the peace you gave him wasn't ordinary, that not everyone is capable of loving like that not every connection makes him feel seen, not just desired. But the truth is, people don't miss attention, they miss understanding. They miss feeling like someone really got them. And no matter who he talks to after you, no matter how beautiful or successful or charming they are, if they don't give him that same feeling of emotional safety, he notices. Not right away, maybe, but eventually, because once you've felt that kind of bond, surface-level attention just feels empty, you became his emotional home. And just like a physical home, you can leave it for a while and think you're fine, but sooner or later, you start to miss the feeling of walking through the door and exhaling, of knowing you don't have to perform, of knowing someone knows your quirks, your moods, your shadows, and still chooses you. That's what you were for him. You were the woman who didn't need him to be perfect to love him. You just needed him to be real. And that kind of acceptance, it leaves a mark, a quiet one that doesn't shout, but it lingers. When things got rough between you, he may have pulled away. Maybe he mistook your calm for complacency. Maybe he mistook your strength for someone who would never leave. But now that you're gone, that safety is gone too, and he feels it more than he expected. He might be surrounded by people. He might be dating someone new. But if he can't be fully himself, unfiltered, unarmored, raw, then he doesn't feel safe. And no matter how hard he tries to move on, a part of him is still measuring everyone against the emotional sanctuary you gave him. Here's the part he doesn't say out loud, even to himself. The reason he thinks about you even now isn't just because he misses you. It's because he misses himself, the version of himself he could be with you. You made him feel stronger, softer, more human. He felt known, and now, in your absence, he feels the distance not only from you, but from that part of himself too. Sometimes he'll sit in a room full of people and still feel alone. Not because he's unloved, but because no one quite knows how to love him like you did. He may not reach out, he may not say it, but the imprint remains. You were his safe place not because you fixed him, but because you accepted him. And long after the conversations fade, long after he tells himself he's fine, he still remembers how it felt to just be with you. That's what makes forgetting impossible. That's what lingers when the excitement of something new wears off. That's why he stays stuck between memory and reality. You didn't just touch his heart. You touched his sense of self. You reminded him that love isn't loud and it isn't about ego. It's about connection. And that kind of imprint, it's not just unforgettable, it's irreplaceable. Regret doesn't always arrive like a thunderstorm. It doesn't always crash in with apologies, breakdowns, or dramatic gestures. More often than not, it comes quietly, it comes slowly, it shows up as a whisper in the back of his mind, something he tries to ignore but keeps hearing anyway. At first, it's just a passing thought, maybe she was right. Then it grows, maybe I messed up. And eventually, when the silence stretches long enough, when the space between you becomes more than just physical, it becomes undeniable. I lost something real. That's how regret works. It builds itself out of the moments he didn't think mattered at the time. In the early stages of separation, especially if he was the one who initiated the distance or pretended not to care, he feels a kind of false freedom. He convinces himself he did the right thing, that he's better off. He might even say it out loud to friends or post about his peace online. But time has a way of peeling back those illusions, because what you offered wasn't just attention or affection, it was depth. And depth doesn't vanish when someone walks away. It settles into the soul, and the deeper it went, the harder it becomes to erase. Regret creeps in during the quiet moments. When he's alone, when he's driving, when he hears a song that reminds him of the way you used to look at him, when you thought he wasn't paying attention. It's not just the big memories that haunt him, it's the little ones. The way you laughed at his dumbest jokes, the way you knew when something was off without him saying a word, the way you believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. These moments pile up, not like weights, but like echoes. And those echoes follow him, growing louder as time passes. At first, he tries to drown them out. He looks for distractions. Maybe he dates other people. Maybe he throws himself into work, into hobbies, into anything that keeps his mind busy. But distractions only delay the inevitable. They don't erase emotional memory. They don't undo the comfort he once felt around you. And every time something reminds him of you, a location, a shared favorite food, a certain phrase, that quiet regret presses harder on his chest. He begins to feel the cost of what he lost, and not just in moments of sadness, but in the realization that no one else seems to fill the space you once held so naturally. What eats at him most is the awareness that you didn't leave in anger. You didn't storm out. You simply stepped back, calmly, respectfully, and that's what stings, because he can't villainize you. He can't blame you. He knows you gave him chances, you gave him patience. And he squandered it. That's the kind of regret that ages like wine. It gets heavier, more potent with time. And the more he reflects on it, the more he starts to feel the weight of your absence, not just as a person, but as a presence, a light that once warmed him and now flickers only in memory. He may never tell you he regrets it. Pride is powerful, and ego often won't allow him to be that vulnerable. But regret doesn't need words to exist. You'll see it in his eyes if you ever cross paths again. You'll feel it in the silence between you. It'll show up in the way he watches you, maybe from a distance, wondering what it would feel like to hold your hand one more time, to hear your voice say his name, not with frustration, but with softness again. He'll wonder what it would be like if he had just done things differently, if he had appreciated you the way you deserved. Time doesn't heal everything. Sometimes time reveals everything. It reveals who really showed up. It reveals who truly cared. It reveals how much he underestimated the value of your presence. And as that realization sinks in, regret becomes a companion he can't shake. Quiet, persistent, constant. Not enough to bring him peace, only enough to remind him that he lost it, and so the quiet regret grows, not in flames, but in embers, slow, burning, deep, lingering, and that's what keeps you in his mind. Not because you're holding on, but because he never really let go, not in the way that matters. His mind, heart, and soul keep circling back, not just to you, but to the version of himself that only existed when you were around. And in that, he begins to understand. Some losses don't break us all at once. They break us over time, piece by piece, until we realize what we should have held on to when we still had the chance. There's something uniquely powerful and disorienting about seeing someone you once had access to now smiling freely, living fully, and radiating peace without you. It's not just about missing them, it's not even about jealousy, it's about the realization that they are no longer tied to your energy, that their world no longer revolves around your presence. And when he sees you laughing in photos, glowing in videos, walking with that quiet confidence, it shakes something in him. Because in that moment, you become a mirror that forces him to see not just who you are without him, but who he failed to become when he had the chance. Most men don't expect you to fall apart when it ends, but a part of them does expect you to pause, to stay a little stuck, to linger emotionally. And when you don't, when you start moving forward with grace and power, it disrupts the script he was subconsciously writing. Because deep down he told himself a story, that you'd always care, that you'd always be somewhat available, that even in separation there would still be a thread connecting the two of you. But your happiness without him. That cuts the thread, and it forces him to reckon with something deeper, the reality that he's no longer part of your light. It's one thing to know someone's moved on, it's another to see it, and when he does, it reawakens all the choices he made or didn't make that led to the distance. The times he chose silence over effort, the moments he ignored your emotional needs, the ways he took for granted the kind of love you gave without conditions. Now, he's watching you become everything he couldn't hold on to. And instead of feeling proud or indifferent, he feels the sting of his own avoidance. You see, your joy is not just a celebration, it's a reflection of how far he didn't go. It holds up a mirror to the emotional growth he ran from. He starts wondering, even if he won't say it out loud, was I the one who held her back? Did I miss the best version of her because I couldn't meet her where she was? These aren't questions born from bitterness. They're born from watching someone become who they were meant to be after leaving you behind, and that realization is sobering, because now he sees it clearly, your peace, your glow, your progress, none of it is about making him jealous. It's about you choosing you, and that's what hits the hardest. He may scroll past your photos, pretend not to care, pretend to be too busy or too numb. But inside, he feels the shift. He feels the gap between who you are now and who he was when you were in his life. And that gap becomes the distance he has to sit with, because while you've evolved, he's still circling around the same patterns. While you've chosen healing and movement, he's dealing with echoes. And every time he sees you smiling in your own world, every time he sees you thriving without needing his validation, he's forced to ask himself, why didn't I step up when I had the chance? This is where growth starts, not with grand revelations, but with uncomfortable truths. You are now evidence of what he missed, what he overlooked, what he didn't nurture, and while he may never say it to you, he knows it inside. He knows you became more than he expected, not in spite of him, but in the absence of him. That's the real impact of seeing you happy without him. It shows him that your power was never dependent on his presence, that your love was never about chasing, proving, or pleading. It was about giving, and when that giving wasn't honored, you chose to protect your peace. There's a kind of beauty that comes from that kind of detachment when your energy no longer flinches at his memory, when your light isn't dimmed by his choices, and that beauty stays with him, not as a burden, not as guilt, but as a reminder of the woman who didn't just survive the heartbreak, she bloomed through it. A reminder of what real strength looks like, quiet, consistent, self-assured. You became the mirror that doesn't lie, the one that shows him exactly what he lost and exactly who you became once he was no longer part of the picture, and that image, that version of you, it lives in his memory now. Not because you're trying to be remembered, but because you've become unforgettable in the most powerful way as a woman who didn't just move on, but moved up. And in doing so, you didn't just reflect his past, you became the mirror of what he still has to become. And that truth, it stays with him longer than any goodbye ever could. There's a moment, and it always comes later, when he starts to question something he never thought to ask before. Did she ever actually need me? At first, he might have believed you did, maybe because you gave so much, maybe because you were always there, you checked in, you showed up, you cared sometimes even more than he did. He mistook your presence for dependence. He thought your consistency meant you couldn't walk away. He assumed that the more you gave, the more you must need him. But now, watching you live, thrive, and smile without his involvement, that illusion crumbles. Slowly, painfully, he realizes you never needed him. You chose him, and that realization, it turns everything upside down in his mind. Because when someone chooses you freely, not out of desperation, not out of fear of being alone, but because they see value in who you are, that's the deepest kind of love. And to know he lost it not because you didn't care, but because you stopped choosing him. That changes everything. This realization doesn't come from watching you cry or break down. It comes from watching you walk away quietly, gracefully, with dignity. It comes from the strength you now radiate, not because you've hardened, but because you've grown. He sees you building a life that isn't centered around him. He watches you succeed, glow, and rise in ways that show you were never dependent, just loyal. You were never weak, just deeply invested. And he starts to wonder, was I ever essential to her happiness, or was I just privileged to be a part of it for a while? There's a kind of insecurity that starts to bubble inside him when he sees your independence. At first, it confuses him. He thought he held more control in the dynamic, that without him, you'd slow down, you'd falter, maybe even reach back. But you didn't. You kept moving. You created your own joy. You stopped checking in, and most of all, you stopped needing his validation. That's when he starts to feel it, that deep, aching question. Was I ever the reason she smiled? Or was I just there while she was already whole? And this isn't just about ego, it's about identity, because many people, especially those not used to truly mutual relationships, build their self-worth around being needed. They confuse need with importance. And when that disappears, when you no longer reach out, when you no longer react, when your silence becomes stronger than any argument could be, they're left with themselves. And in that space, he starts confronting the truth. You loved him, but you didn't need him. You gave freely, but you never clung. You wanted to grow with him, not attach yourself to him. That difference is everything, because now, as he watches from afar, whether through social media, mutual friends, or just quiet memories, he sees you moving in your own power. And that power is undeniable. It's not loud or flashy. It's subtle. It's the way you've stopped explaining yourself. It's the way you don't look back. It's the peace you carry in your presence now, and that peace speaks volumes. You are not broken without him. You are not paused. You are not seeking something to fill a void because there was no void. There was only a space you allowed him to be in, and when it no longer felt right, you left it behind. So now he wrestles with that truth. Every smile of yours he sees, every success, every effortless moment of joy, it echoes with that silent message. She was never mine. She was only with me, and the weight of that is different than losing someone who was dependent on you. Because it means you could have stayed, but you chose not to. It means he didn't lose someone who needed him. He lost someone who had the strength to leave when they realized their worth wasn't being honored. That thought lingers. It keeps him up sometimes. It makes him question not just your relationship, but himself. Why did he assume your love came from need? Why didn't he recognize the strength it took to love so fully while expecting nothing but respect and reciprocity in return? And now that you're gone, now that your silence speaks louder than anything else ever did, he understands the gravity of what he lost. Not someone who leaned on him out of weakness, but someone who stood beside him out of choice. And in that realization, he finally sees the truth. You didn't need him. You were just willing to walk alongside him. And once he broke that trust, once he failed to meet you there, you chose yourself. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but because you always could, because you always would. That's what he remembers now, not the times you cried or cared too much, but the moment you proved that your love was never about needing him. It was about choosing him, and now that the choice is gone, he understands what real loss actually feels like. There's a quiet kind of regret that creeps in not immediately, not with a big dramatic realization, but slowly, in waves. It happens when he least expects it, while scrolling through his phone, sitting alone in a familiar place, hearing a song you both loved. It comes with the heavy truth he kept avoiding. He took you lightly. He didn't see the full weight of your love, the rarity of your presence, or the depth of what you brought to his life until it was no longer his to hold. And once that truth settles in, it doesn't let go. At first, he might have thought he had time. He assumed you'd always be there, always be understanding, always be forgiving. He got used to your emotional labor, the way you explained your feelings, how you worked through the hard conversations, how you stayed even when it hurt. He mistook your loyalty for limitlessness, and that mistake made him careless, not because he meant to hurt you, but because he didn't fully grasp what it meant to be loved by someone like you. And when someone doesn't understand what they're holding, they stop holding it with care. But now he gets it. He sees you from a distance, wiser, brighter, more at peace, and he realizes how much of you he underestimated. He didn't see how deeply you loved because you never made a show of it. You didn't perform affection, you gave it quietly, consistently. He didn't recognize your strength because it wasn't loud, it was steady. It was in how you stayed soft in the middle of the chaos, how you supported him when he didn't know how to support himself. And worst of all, he didn't understand the cost of taking that love for granted until you were no longer giving it. The hardest part of that realization is this: it wasn't one big mistake that made you leave. It was a series of small ones, the little dismissals, the passive silence, the emotional absence, the way he made you feel like your love was always there for the taking but rarely appreciated. And when you finally walked away, he thought maybe you were just trying to teach him a lesson. He thought you'd be back, that it was temporary, but you didn't come back. You didn't try to prove your worth anymore. And that's when the regret settled in like a storm. He starts replaying everything. The text he didn't answer, the times he invalidated your feelings, the moments you asked for more, and he made you feel like it was too much, and now those moments don't feel small anymore, they feel heavy. They feel final, because they weren't just moments, they were signs, and he ignored them. He thought you'd keep waiting, keep reaching, keep shrinking your needs to fit his comfort zone, but you didn't. You outgrew the version of love where you had to fight to be seen, and now he's stuck in the realization that he had something real, and he treated it like it was replaceable. That's the thing about genuine love. It doesn't scream for attention. It just is, and because of that, some people don't realize its value until they feel its absence. Now he feels it everywhere, in the quiet, in the people he tries to distract himself with, in the way his new conversations feel shallow. You became the standard, the comparison he never thought he'd be making, not because you were perfect, but because you were real, you were present, you were emotionally available in ways he wasn't ready to receive. And now that he's ready, you're gone. He starts to understand that taking someone lightly doesn't just mean ignoring them. It means failing to honor what they bring. It means not rising to meet them. It means not cherishing the parts of them that were only ever given out of trust. And once that trust is broken, it's not easily rebuilt, not because you're bitter, but because you're better. You now know what your love is worth. And you're no longer interested in offering it to someone who only recognized its value in hindsight. Regret is a teacher, and now he's learning. He's learning what it means to miss someone who loved him fully. He's learning that presence is not the same as connection, that being there isn't enough if the heart isn't engaged. And he's learning far too late that the lightness with which he held you cost him something he'll be chasing in echoes for a long time. Someone who didn't just want him, but believed in him. Someone who showed up with depth and patience and softness even when it wasn't returned. Now, every time he sees you smile without him, every time he hears about you doing well, every time your name comes up in a way that makes him pause, the regret deepens, not because you're trying to make him feel it, but because you finally stopped giving him chances to change it, and in that silence, he understands the finality of what he lost, not just a relationship, but a love that he will never again experience in the same way. One he took lightly and will never forget.